The second part of the lesson is build up one another, encourage one another. 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 11 through 13. Okay, so he says, Christians should build up each other until they receive their full salvation. What he's talking about is we receive our full salvation when we go to be with the Lord. That's when we receive the full salvation. So until then, we need to be encouraging to each other. We need to be building each other up. And we should remind each other of the future that we have. I mean, we have a future. Somebody said, being a Christian, one of the great things about being a Christian is the great future that we have. We have a future that's out of this world. And so, yeah, thank goodness. Yes, so we need to be reminded of that ever so often. We need to encourage one another with that. And he goes on to say that those who work hard as leaders, you should give them honor, you should give them praise. Sometimes it's very hard, like pastors. You won't hear the pastor probably say a whole lot of complaining about his work and about what's going on, but I can tell you right now that many times they get very discouraged. I mean, you prepare a sermon every week, and you get up there and you preach, and then next week people come in, and they're living a life that goes completely contrary to the sermon that you preached on Sunday. And they either weren't there to hear it, and now here they are in your office, woe is me because I messed up. Well, if you'd been at church, you'd heard the sermon. Or they were there and heard it, but they just went out and put it out of their mind and did whatever.
That was for someone else.
Yeah, that was for someone else.
The ravens came and stole.
What's that?
The ravens came
Yes,
and stole.
yeah. So it can get very discouraging. So leaders need to be encouraged. They need to hear, positive from people. They need to hear that encouragement because as much as they seem to be on top of things, they can go through those days that are really, really. And that's where the service that is provided is more important than the status that the person holds.
Exactly right.
Sometimes we don't give people credit for the service that they provide. They do things, they minister to the people around them, and because they're not holding a position, if we're not careful, we don't think to encourage them to continue doing what you're doing. And so he's saying, you need to encourage those people that provide service, that do things to minister to other people. Whether they have a title or they don't have a title, doesn't matter. That's not what's important. And in some, I'm going to say, circles, I'll put it that way, titles are very important. It's like, oh, wow, I made this at my church. Okay, what does this do it to church? And sometimes they can't even define it exactly, but they've got the title, and they're very proud of it. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with somebody having a title, but if it's just a title, I've seen people that work to get a title, and it's like, well, okay, so you're the whatever, the vice president of the blah, blah, blah. What does the vice president of the blah, blah, blah do? No, nobody seems to know. It was just given as a title. It's like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But here's this other person who does all these things with no title, and nobody recognizes who they are. It's like, wow, that's not the way Paul is saying. He's saying, no, those people that are serving you, be at peace with one another and serve one another. Do good to all. Did you read? How far down did you read, Dan?
We're at 15.
Okay, so we've already read verses 14 and 15, where there's 4 exhortations there. Warn those who are idle and disruptive, he says. They need a warning. People need to be busy working for the Lord, and if they're not, they need to be warned. Hey, you need to find something to do. The interesting thing is those that are idle, guess what? They're usually the ones that are disruptive. You know, if you're busy doing stuff, you don't have time to be critical of other people. But if you're not busy doing something, it's real easy to say, well, I would have never done it that way. Well, no, you would have never done it. But
See, now there you go.
yeah.
But they can always see what everybody else should have done.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Exactly.
And they'll always butt in, you know, they always have authority. They have authority over one area, but they're telling people in this other area, this is how you should do it. Well, you're not taking care of your business, so why are you trying to tell me? And so he's saying, you know, you need to, those people need to be dealt with. Don't let them be idle and be disruptive and cause division, because that's what they do, is they cause division. So yeah, those people that are idle or those people that are disruptive, they need to be dealt with. The second thing he says, encourage the disheartened. People get really disheartened. Things happen in their life and they begin to get down. And when we know that about someone, we need to encourage them. We need to lift them up. He's saying to the church at Thessalonica, keep encouraging one another. Don't let each other get down. Carry each other's burdens. Be there for each other. And then he says, you know, those that are weak in the faith and knowledge and wisdom, you need to teach them and help them grow and become, so that they've got wisdom, so they've got the knowledge, so they understand their faith. Don't let them, you know, not learn. Because we have people that come into the church. It's always interesting to me when you have people that have been in the church for years and years and years, and they have very little knowledge of Scripture, and it's like, why? Why is that? What's going on here? They need to learn the Scripture. They need to know about faith. They need to understand about those things. And so sometimes we've got to be the one to teach them, you know. And so then the other thing is be patient toward all people. That's sometimes a hard one. It's like, ugh. So we need to have patience. That's a hard one. And another thing he says, don't try to get even. That's the Lord's.
No, you just build a spite fence.
Yeah.
Don't get even, just stay away from me.
Jesus told us that we're to repay evil with good.
Yeah.
That's a tough one though.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that at times. God calls us to forgiveness, you know. Jesus kind of laid it out when he said, love your neighbor as yourself. And that's a pretty clear statement, because if we loved other people like we love ourselves, this would be a different world.